saying the meeting is being live streamed.
Awesome. Okay. Here we are. We are live. Okay, great. Technical difficulties, but let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on today's Jamaica Diaspora Task Force Action Network event. My name is Carleen Tomlinson, and I'd like to welcome you on behalf of JDTAN. Today, we're going to get started we're going to continue our talk on Back to School 2022. We started last week. Mrs. Mitzi Harris Dillon laid the foundation for us about what Back to School 2022 has been looking like on the ground, the trials and errors and the challenges that have been encountered. And as Jamaicans, we're bouncing back and trying to be as resilient as possible. And today we're going to delve further in our discussion of strategies that parents can use to intervene. We talked some last week about parents setting structure and reinforcing what's happening at school. And today we're going to delve deeper into learning styles and learning gaps and how parents might address those and reinforce what's happening at school. So let's begin our talk today with our presenter, Ms. Andrea M. Thomas is going to be our first speaker. And just to let you know a little bit about Ms. Thomas, she earned a bachelor's degree in communications, and then she went on to earn a master's degree in elementary education, and then a second master's degree in administration and supervision with a minor in special education. She's also currently enrolled in a leadership program, a doctoral program on leadership, innovation, and continuous improvement. Ms. Thomas has served in several capacities, including a teacher, assistant principal, supervisor of guidance and pupil personnel, as well as interim humanities chairperson. So we're very pleased to have Ms. Thomas, and thank you so much for giving us a talk on learning styles and strategies to address.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this presentation. And I hope it is my hope that you take away something from this presentation. As I share my screen, I just wanted to let you know that this is by no means an exhaustive list of strategies. What I did was I tried to condense them into a user-friendly way so that everybody can take away something at this time. All righty, let's begin. So what does the term learning style mean? A learning style is basically a way that students learn. Learning style refers to how they comprehend, process, and retain information that is learned. You know, the learning process is more than just getting information. The brain has to ingest the information, and the brain has to disseminate the information to wherever it needs to go so that it can be used for future date. And also, the learning style refers to how a student takes new information and make it accessible to other subject matters. All right, so let's talk about the history of learning styles theory. This is a relatively modern, according to our educational system. Our educational system started way back in the 1700s. And so the learning style system did not really begin until about 1904. As you know, previously, most scholars were sitting in a one-room schoolhouse with multiple layers of classroom ages. And so learning styles did not come around until 1904. Alfred Binet, a French psychologist, developed the first learning intellectual test. And most of us who have gone to grad school, we've learned about Pavlov. And I think that's where that started in the 1700s. And so it continued to 1907, where Dr. Maria Montessori invented the Montessori system. We have many Montessori schools here in the States. And in 1956, Benjamin Bloom developed a Bloom taxonomy, which a lot of educators use today. In 1962, we have the Myers-Briggs, which is an indicator of intelligence. And then in 1976, we have the Done and Done learning styles. In 1984, David Kolb published his learning style methodology, where he determined that learning styles are closely related to cognitive skills. And of course, the famous Howard Gardner in 2013, who published his theories on multiple intelligences. And so most educators today use the Howard Gardner model. And so this is a picture of Howard Gardner's model and how students learn. And so many students have spatial, which is visual, they see things in 3D, a naturalist, which is understanding living things and reading nature, musical, which discerns sounds, pitch, tone, rhythm, and timbre. And I have a story about that. When I was teaching 6th grade, I had a student who was very, very low, tested very low in his reading abilities. However, we took the children to see a musical on Broadway, and he was able to tell me plot, theme, main characters, everything. And so I discerned that his learning style was musical. And so I had to adjust my teaching accordingly. You have the child who is logical, mathematical. They usually try to come up with a hypothesis and solve it. You have the child who is existential. Why? They're constantly asking why. I'm sure you have children like that who are constantly asking why. Why, mom? Why, dad? Why are we doing this? Why do we do this? Why is the sky blue? Why is that sign yellow? So that's the existential part of the students that's coming out. Then there is the interpersonal, the child who is who senses the emotions and who feeds off the emotions. And so that's the interpersonal skills. Then you have the bodily kinesthetic, which is the movement, linguistic, which is the person who expresses themselves through language, the intrapersonal, who is the person who is very they're inner focused, and again, the visual. And if you want to get more involved in it, Howard Gardner has a book called The Frames of Mind, The Theory of Multiple Intelligences, and I'm sure it's available in any library. All right, so let's get to the nitty gritty of it. So the strength of the visual learner. The visual learner is usually great at spelling and grammar. They're great at sign language. They do well in subjects such as writing and art, and they can usually interpret graphs and charts rather quickly. Visual learners refers to exactly what you see, your sight. So your sight is how you ingest new information and interpret it. And here are some strategies that you can use with the visual learner. All right, so the visual learner usually asks for a demonstration. They need to see how something is done. So for example, if you are in the kitchen and you have a visual learner at home and you are baking, they need to see how much you are measuring, how much you're putting in that cake, how much, how many eggs you're using, how do you mix it, et cetera, et cetera. They need time to process information after a lecture. They may request handouts from the teacher because they need to see the information. Short clips and videos will definitely reinforce new information learned. They use white spaces in their notes to organize themselves. So basically, what I teach my students who are visual learners to put a line down the middle of their page, and they write their notes to the left, and anything that comes to mind as they process to the right that corresponds to the notes. All right. They draw symbols and pictures to depict information. They make outlines of information they read. So most times I'm a visual learner. So most times when I'm reading, I need to make notes in the margin so that I am processing the information as I'm reading. They create graphs and charts to aid comprehension, and they use flashcards to study. So That's me right there. I need flashcards to study. So your visual learners are going to need all that help in order to process the information. All right, auditory learners. And auditory is, again, the speaking. Auditory learners are great at following verbal directions. They often enjoy in-class discussions. They're great at explaining ideas out loud. They understand changes in tone of voice. They are gifted storytellers. They can brainstorm and arrive at a solution very, very quickly for complex problems. And they're usually skilled at oral presentation and class reports. All right. And here are some strategies for the auditory learners. They often need a study partner. They may need to record their class lectures. They may need to sit near the front of the room because they need to hear everything that is going on. They may need to listen to classical music while studying. They need to read the assignments out loud to process what is required of them. They may need to take an oral exam instead of a written one. And I know a lot of teachers don't like this because it's time consuming, but for auditory learners, an oral exam is usually preferred. And teachers may need to modulate their tone of voice for better comprehension. And these are just some of the strategies, not a lot, not the exhaustive list. All right, the tactile learner, the learner who likes to touch. They need hands-on activities. So usually a tactile learner will do well in science because the science labs are touchable. They learn best when they can physically move. So for example, in my old classroom, before I became an assistant principal, I used to have what we call learning groups. And after 15 minutes, we would rotate. So the tactile learner would definitely enjoy that. They enjoy working with tools. So we have stations, and each station would have a different tool, be it highlighter or whatever. The tactile learner has to touch something. They usually play with coins or keys in their pockets. So if you notice, if you notice your student has their hand in their pocket to jiggle something. I don't know if you guys had this a couple of years back. They had the spinners that people, oh Lord have mercy, it drove me nuts. But the spinners that those are tactile for tactile learners. And usually the tactile learner would finger spell. They think better while moving around, and they often need frequent study breaks. So those are our lovely tactile learners. All right, so here we go. What strategies can be used with a tactile learner? So the tactile learner would need to participate in things like building, touching, moving, drawing. Lots of hands-on activities, completing art projects, taking walks, acting out stories. And I know some teachers are probably going to crucify me for this, but tactile learners usually like to chew gum while learning. That's not, I don't know. I know we have a no gum rule in my school, so it was very surprising for me to learn this. Even while learning, they like to rock their chair, rock back and forth while studying or learning. Using flashcards to show relationships between ideas. They trace their words with their finger after learning, after spelling. They take frequent breaks, frequent study breaks, but not too long. They usually tap a pencil or shake a foot while learning. So I know that used to drive me crazy when I was in the classroom, the tapping of the pencil. So I would have the children tap in their lap if it's annoying to the teacher. And then the tactile learner would use a computer to reinforce learning through the sense of touch. All right. Our next learner is the kinesthetic learner. Now, this one is a little difficult because this learner is movement. This learner likes to move. And so you have our learners who likes to move. And sometimes it's not always feasible to move in the classroom, but we have to learn to accommodate our kinesthetic learners. So our kinesthetic, the strengths are they're great at sports. They have great hand-eye coordination. They perform well in art and drama. they can usually recall steps after seeing it once. They love hands-on experiments. They have quick reactions and have very high energy. So I would gander in my professional capacity to think that if my learner has ADHD, he probably or she probably ends up in the kinesthetic learning column. So here's what some things that we can do to help our kinesthetic learner. We're going to combine teaching with brain breaks that involve movement. So for example, what I used to do in my classroom is that when I'm teaching and I realize that my kinesthetic people are getting very bored, I would say, all right, we're going to take a little brain break. We're going to get up, we're going to stretch. We're going to spin around for a couple of minutes, and then we're going to sit down and continue the lesson. All right. They need to use a pen or pencil or highlighter and sticky notes all the time. So they need something to constantly be in their hands. They enjoy doodling, which is just marking, just random marking on the paper. Volunteer them for class tasks, such as giving out handouts or quick errands to the office. They need that break. They're great at projects and experiments, and they need alternatives to written assessments, such as acting out on assignments. So if you're doing a project on, I don't know, it's Black History Month here. And so if you're doing a project on Martin Luther King, you can have that kinesthetic learner retell the speech or act out the speech of I Have a Dream. All right, that is the end of my strategies. Any questions? I will be happy to entertain any questions at this time.
Okay, let's take a look. Let's have a look. Thank you, Andrea. That was very, it's a very wieldy topic.
Right.
So there's a lot.
Right. It's not exhaustive, but I tried to condense as much as possible.
Yeah, very nicely done. Very nicely done. Let me check if there are any questions or comments. And I just want to mention to everyone that whoever joined late, or if you're watching this at a later time, JDTAN did provide rice and peas, oxtail, cord goat, and carrot juice. So unfortunately, you missed it. So make sure you're here on Sundays. We have the special from JDTAN, and Ms. Andrea Thomas gave us the information on learning styles and strategies. Very compact and comprehensive. I don't see any questions or comments, just folks giving us a good afternoon greeting. So thank you all. Is there, let's see. So I'm gonna get out of the switch mode here. You can stop sharing.
Oh, sure.
All right, Ms. Thomas. So we'll keep an eye out. There may be additional questions later on after our next presenter.
Not a problem. Be happy to accommodate. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our next topic and bring up Dr. Vivian Kerr. Dr. Vivian Kerr is, she earned a Doctor of Education degree, and she is currently the president of the Caribbean Graduate School of Theology. She's an experienced educator, a counseling psychologist, a librarian, an administrator, and life coach within the education and faith-based communities. Dr. Kerr is the vice chair of the National Parent Teachers Association Region 6, and she's the author of the newly released book, It Still Takes a Village, Help for Parents in Dealing with Academic Underperformance. So who else would be more than apt, the best possible person we could have to talk to us about learning loss, learning gaps? Dr. Kerr will be our speaker today. And Dr. Kerr, I'm going to hand the reins over to you at this time.
Okay, thank you very much, Kelly. Pleasant afternoon to those who have joined us so far. It is indeed a pleasure for me to be presenting to you. And for those persons who may have been with us throughout the pandemic, I'm sure you're going to be recognizing one or two of the slides I'll share in this presentation as we seek to get everyone else on board. So my task today is to look at learning gaps and interventions for parents. Here we go. Just confirm if you see my slides and if it's actually.
We are good to go.
Okay. So it's also advancing.
Yes, in advance, we will explore.
Great. We are looking at how to identify learning gaps in our children. And we are also looking at how it is that we can bridge that learning gap that has been created. We're looking at the role of our parents and guardians in helping their children in bridging the gap, and interventions for parents. So we're looking at a number of things that have been happening on the ground here in Jamaica and how it is that parents are being supported as we deal with the pandemic. So let me share with you a very quick story. Won't play the video in the interest of time, but the story for Jamaican mom who will remain nameless. This mother had a daughter who was preparing for the CSEC exams. And of course, we're still in the pandemic, a lot of uncertainties, a lot of trial and errors in the schools, as you heard our presenter last week share. And so the concerns were growing. How do I ensure that my daughter, who is now exiting the high school system, will in fact excel and perform to her maximum? I was concerned, right? Because what the UNESCO study showed is that the COVID pandemic had a negative effect on the Jamaican society. There was fear of our children dying from COVID. So of course we closed, the government ordered Jamaica to close the schools and everything. And we know last week we look at the fact that there was resumption of school. So we're seeing the before, nice, happy children, all hugging and everything, very loving. And then post-pandemic, we're seeing their faces are being covered. Yeah, you have to look carefully to know who they are. So the concerns grew. Here are some of the factors that would have resulted in the learning gaps in Jamaica. And these are actually statements, feedback received by our Jamaican children. Most of them did not like online school. They got a lot of assignments and they felt they didn't get enough time in which to complete them. Many of them had various internet connectivity issues, and parents and children both struggled with that. Some of them either had no device or inappropriate devices such as cell phones rather than laptops and computers, laptops or tablets. There's also a lot of distractions at home because now everybody was at home, parents, children, and even visitors from time to time. There's a difficulty grasping certain subjects, concepts taught in mathematics or the foreign languages. They really struggled in those areas, and some of the science areas, which you heard earlier by my previous presenter, is very hands-on. Some of them were slow, and so the slower and the shyer ones, they were left behind. Some of it could be because of the technology, getting accustomed to the technology was new to them, or just that cognitively they needed more time to process what was being taught. We had teachers who were then moving from topic to topic, and they found that that was too quick, and so they didn't absorb things. They had difficulty doing assignments. And when it came on to exams, yeah, we know the stories. Some of them, got kicked offline. Some of their parents were helping them, so there were all kinds of difficulty. So some of them got very lethargic, and so they were in discipline. When parents returned to work, they didn't have parental supervision, and so that demotivated many of them when they had nobody to help when they had a challenge. Some of them had headaches, visual challenges, exhaustion due to long hours online. And there was a lot of competition with the social media platforms and a lot of distracting background noises and scenes due to socioeconomic conditions, which sometimes made turning on their cameras very embarrassing. So what are learning gaps? By definition, they are the differences between what a child or a student is expected to have learned by a certain grade level versus what they have actually learned up to that point. So when we're talking about learning gaps, that's what we're talking about. The gap between what is being expected versus what actually exists. This was taken from a US-based publication, and it looks at 7 ways to bridge the gap, and they speak about pastoral support for students, quality blended teaching and learning, And this is where you're having face-to-face, you're having online as you're able to now in Jamaica. You're having what they call circular intervention. And you can dig a bit, more afterwards into these areas. And a lot of professional learning opportunities were created for teachers. There's also focused learning support that was provided. And as you're seeing there, this is where it was provided to the specific students who are having challenges, especially those who are preparing for the external exams and GSAT or CAPE. And they also speak about catch-up tutoring. And this is where you're now going to be trying to ensure that all the gaps that you're seeing will be filled. There's also enhanced parental engagement. Now, parents recognized very, very early when the pandemic started that they were crucial. So what we had happening and what's now happening is what we call academic underperformance. And this is when a student is working way below their potential, they're working below their abilities and not achieving that which they should. And you're seeing the source. Academic underachievement will therefore result. Say they underperform, and then the reports will show the underachievement. This is when the child's academic performance is below what is expected based on the child's ability, aptitude, or intelligence, i.e. learning gap. How do you know if your child is underperforming academically? And I thought I'd just put a checklist. It's 10 items. I'm going to go through them. The presentation, again, as you know, will be on the YouTube channel. You can always go back, refresh as we end the session today or thereafter. So there is the child who does not complete assignments, homework, has no interest in doing so or in doing it well. They just do something. They don't care. He or she refuses to do the homework. Or the child tells you that he or she could have done better on a test or an assignment or a project. The child will also have difficulty understanding, learning, remembering, or completing the work that has been assigned. Or his or her grades are lower than you expected, even if the grades are above the pass mark. I repeat, there's a gap if the child's grades are lower than you expected, even if it is above the pass mark that is set by the school or the teacher. Continuing, his or her grades are therefore low, below the pass mark or standard that's set by the teacher or the school. The one before spoke to the fact that the child is passing but is not performing to maximum or peak. This is speaking about them really underperforming below the level that is set by the school. He or she is performing number 7 below or way below that of his peers, not just the school, but persons in their own age group or stage developmentally. His or her teacher state on the report that he or she has the potential to do better. So look for that on your reports. His or her teacher tells you that the child can do better during your parent-teacher consultation sessions. Or it's really bad now when the school calls you in to discuss your child's academic underperformance. Tips for parents: if your children are studying offline, you have no internet or anything, you may not be on, but I'm sure there are others who might be able to tell you of what to do. Strategies for parents. We have the Ministry of Education's website, and so we direct persons to them, especially for the babies. The Early Childhood Commission, they also have help for parents. You can go on, you're seeing all those links there for you to be able to access support. So help is available. We ask that parents collaborate with their schools, get the necessary resources, and we continue to emphasize the importance of textbooks, workbooks. And while we are still in the pandemic, they need data or Wi-Fi, and there are some newspapers which have supplements which give you additional support. We ask that you create a schedule or a timetable for each child and encourage your children, assist them when they need help. And if you can't, get help. Be supportive of the school system and of your child. Now, within Jamaica, we ask that parents visit the Ministry of Education website and look at the resources that are available, because there's help available online. Look at the subjects that were tested at each stage, that will be tested at each grade and stage, the types of assessments and what they entail, what the student needs to do in order to successfully complete each requirement, And the requirements are different for each area being assessed. And this is now more specific for PEP and for CSEC or CAPE. So PEP and CSEC requirements: consult your class syllabus, the subject syllabus, and your class teachers, the students, teachers at the various schools. The PEP and CSEC exam calendar, because there are timelines that you need to be aware of for submissions of the major projects, and what will be examined at each grade and stage is critical. Parents also need to know where to get help, know where to go and how to identify, locate, and acquire library resources. So we continue to push the need for those who cannot afford the resources to use the libraries, and to get all the other items that you need to complete the project. So some of them will be tangible items, know where to go and get them. We ask that parents review the homework that is completed before the submission deadlines, proofread and edit if you need to make sure they're maximizing on their marks. Request progress reports, recommendations for improvements from each teacher that the child has to deal with. Help your child to make the recommended changes or the improvements that are recommended. Get help if the process is challenging and you do not know what to do. Learn to interpret your test results, or the PEP scores as they are called. Seek to understand how your child's placement is determined. And we say this a lot to the PEP parents. Prepare the child to bloom where he or she is planted. It's the same seed that they're going to do in the end. So it is important, therefore, that parents are monitoring the homework for the children, visiting their schools to discuss concerns, attending PTA meetings, supporting school activities, arranging private tutor if it becomes necessary. Help parents are expected to support their children during the period that is scheduled for class by not giving them chores to do. I want to introduce this book to you because it came out of the pandemic. It was, as I saw what was happening, I recognized there was going to be a loss. And so this book was created specifically for children within the Caribbean. So it speaks to some of the things that are, or the other things that I'll be presenting now, come specifically from that, all right? And for Jamaicans who are online, just giving you a sense of where the book is available. You can always go back, take a screenshot if you need, and be able to access same. So here goes. This book actually looks at, among other things, a prescription-based solution to bridge the learning gap. And I'm not going to take any credit for this. I had a concern, I sought the Lord, and he said to me, these are some of the things that need to happen. So it's not my work, right? Came straight from above. Step 1, identify your child's dominant learning style. You just heard about learning styles a while ago, so you know exactly what's involved in that. Know how it is that the child learns best, and therefore you'll know how to help them. When you know your child's learning style, you'll be able to share that also with your teachers, and the information can be used to choose the most appropriate strategy to help him or her. You heard that earlier as our other presenter spoke about learning and learning styles. Then the next thing you need to do, get a psychoeducational assessment or evaluation done. So this assessment will reveal the source of the problem. And here's it. It's not always academic. Many times other things are happening, okay? So the assessment or the evaluation may be conducted by a psychologist, a school counselor, child psychologist, educational psychologist, counseling, or any of the categories you're seeing listed there. The counselor will interview both the parent and the child in order to identify why the child is underperforming. Then we ask that you look now at your school reports. I had an activity with some colleagues, and when we asked parents for their school reports, they could not find the children's school report. Please put them away safely, but you also need to consult them. So we ask that you look at past school reports, because it will reveal the trends or the patterns of weaknesses that need to be addressed in identifying and strategizing to solve those areas of weakness. Correcting those deficiencies will provide a stronger foundation on which to build. Spoke about getting a tutor already. If there are weaknesses that are there and the tutor is trying and is not working out, guess what? You need to get the child assessed. So the individual attention may be given, and that will equip your child to advance to a higher cognitive function or task. Step 4, identify or diagnose if the child has a problem. And so we're saying have the child tested psychometrically. Basically says if the additional challenges are identified while the tutor is working with the child, or if the child is not advancing as you expected or as you're expecting, the child may have a learning disability, and that needs to be identified through psychometric testing at an approved assessment center. I'm going to go through that quickly, but let me just quickly share with you the differences. I mentioned a number of psychologists before for the psychoeducational assessment, but there are also other professionals such as the neuropsychologists, because some of them, it's really something that's wrong with the brain, and so that needs to be assessed. The psychometrist, that's the person who does the tests, various tests that might occur, etc. And there might be a speech or language specialist that's needed, that's a therapist. And I want to emphasize to parents online that the Ministry of Education has a special education unit and educators who go throughout the island assisting. Please make use of those resources. Step 5, get a prescription for the child's success, not medical now, psychological. So to solve the child's problem of academic underperformance, the counselor will combine the results of the learning style profile that we spoke about before, the psychoeducational assessments, psychometric tests, and was done to identify the challenges. You're going to review the grade reports, and that person will then be able to prescribe to say, this is what needs to be done. So I came up with a formula, and the formula is learning style profile plus the psychoeducational assessment plus the grade report assessment gives you the diagnosis of the prescription, and then you get to remediation. Step 6, work with the guidance counselor or the school social worker to manage the process. So for the situation to improve, yes, you know what is wrong. You now need to work as a team. So the team will need to work together to fix the various situations or challenges or problems that they have found that have resulted in the child's academic underperformance. If a social worker is assigned to your child's school, this professional will coordinate the work of individuals providing care and support for the child. Where there's no social worker, the school's guidance counselor needs to act as a liaison among the various professionals. Where the guidance counselor is unable to perform this task because they have so many hundreds of students, then the child's parent will just have to do that coordination. So here are the steps. Step 1, take a picture if you choose. Just went through them, but thought I'll just put them on screen so you're seeing them. Came up with this, it's called the success formula. And also for those of us who are visual, that will help you to remember it, we're hoping. So you need to, as parents, help your children to deal with the new norm. So children with prior problems of anxiety may not be extremely anxious during the time of this societal stress. Take your child's anxiety seriously and don't minimize the feelings or the symptoms. Accept that they are fearful and seek to allay their fears. If your child or teen is having difficulty functioning in the day-to-day activities, they seem tired or withdrawn, they can't control worrying, if you're having trouble sleeping or eating, these can be indicators that your child is having significant difficulty adjusting and might benefit from professional help. We're now in the face-to-face phase, and you look out for all of these things. Children who never would stop, who are now potty trained, start, but in the bed again, those are clues that the child is really anxious. Pay attention. Many counselors are now offering virtual services through phone or video platforms like these. We ask that you consult with your child's primary care provider or the insurance company, because what's happening in Jamaica, we're having companies who are now customizing products for our children, and speak with your school guidance counselor for help or referrals, because there's help available. We just want to reiterate that. We ask that you limit news and media exposure regarding the COVID-19. as repeated exposure to this information can in fact heighten anxiety, and you may have some persons having panic attacks, so you need to cut that. So parents, we ask that you understand, and I think you're getting the hang of it. It's a huge responsibility that has now been laid at your feet. Was always there, but it's even now more confirmed. We know that some schools, as they seek to provide support, they would have had psychosocial support for their parents. Now parents are being asked to take a break. Self-care becomes critical because you too can get overwhelmed. Parents, you're also being asked to be active participants in your PTA. That's where all the information is being given out, tips and all of that. Make sure you're involved. And the PTAs are asked to reach out to your parents, because there are some parents who last week we heard are saying that they're not being engaged and not getting the chance to share their voices and so on. It happens at PTA meetings, so you attend those too. And the president of the PTA last week, Mrs. Mitzi Harris Dillon, did ask that where PTAs are not functioning, that the schools reach out and in fact let them know so they can provide the support and guidance to get them working well. So we mentioned psychosocial support, and we know that we had laptop and tablet drives in a number of schools, the entire island. The Ministry of Education was also participating in that. Many schools distributed care packages. These are some of the intervention strategies that were, employed, are still being employed. Some parents are still unemployed. So there's social security support for unemployed and underemployed parents. So, some persons, they always were cut. And there's the Ministry of Health and Wellness has free 24/7 counseling hotlines. Those were set up during the pandemic. And we also know that there's psychosocial support free too, hotlines that were set up by the National Parenting Support Commission. So help's available. In the midst of the pandemic, the institution that you are hearing that I oversee, CJC, Caribbean Graduate School of Theology, we designed 2 programs specifically for the pandemic. One was on telephone and online counseling, because we recognize the face-to-face and the direct contact was a challenge. And that's available, shared with you there, the listing as to get their website. And the other is therapeutic interventions for counselors who are providing psychoeducational support for parents and guardians. Now, this is for the guidance counselors now, and all those persons who are providing support to parents. They are taught how to do so and to do so effectively and well. The site is also there. I want to just share this screen with you because we also at CJST provide counseling services, and we want for persons who need that support, take a screenshot if you need to know where to get help, all right? Please do not suffer in silence because help is available. Today is February the 6th, and as I thought about what's happening in Jamaica, this came to mind, and I said, why not just give us a little Bob Marley's birthday, right? I'm hoping that it will work. All right.
It's low volume, but I think I hear a little bit. The volume is low on my end.
Dr. Kerr, I can't hear anything as well.
Is it that you're hearing it, but it's not loud enough?
Hear like the background of it.
Okay. But I think we all know. Just wanted to just kind of encourage our hearts and soul as we go through the pandemic, as Bob Marley said. Don't worry about a thing because every little thing is going to be all right. I'm going to stop sharing. Just wanted us to be remembering that as we go through and recognize this man who globally is a Jamaican, but the world knows him and he gives words of encouragement. Every little thing, no matter what's happening, pandemic or not. He didn't know about the pandemic, right? It's not with us, but everything is going to be all right. Bless you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. That is definitely a wonderful way to end the presentation, because it's a heavy thing. Sometimes when you were going through everything, it's such a challenge, and parents have such a hard road already. They're dealing with so much. So thank you so much for all those resources and all that information. And we're encouraged also, of course, the ministry is doing the best that they can, and they're providing resources as well for parents. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Let me go to some of the questions. We had a question from Ms. Petal Love, and she asked, is it possible to teach and cater to all learning styles in a 40-minute lesson? And if so, how is this presented on a lesson plan? So I think that's a question for you, Ms. Andrea, from when you're talking about.
Yeah, so that requires, it's a multi-layered answer. And I'm going to start with the first thing. The first thing is that the teacher has to establish a relationship with every student. I know it's hard, but that is the essence of teaching. If you don't have a relationship with your students, you're not going to be able to get them to learn from you. Getting to know them, having conversations, you know, it might seem a little intrusive at first, but that is the only way you're going to get to know how to reach your students. That's number one. Secondly, when you're planning, because you know, now that you know your students, when you're planning, you can say, all right, Nathan likes baseball. So I'm going to definitely think that he's a kinesthetic learner, and I'm going to put activities in my lesson that will appeal to parts of my classroom. Now, I'm not going to be able to get all of my students at one time, but every activity that you put into your lesson should be able to appeal to a sector of your lesson. We have something here called universal learning by design. It's really backwards learning. So what you do is you look at your lesson plan, you say to yourself, what do I want to achieve? And then you start there, and then you plan backwards so that you're able to get to almost all your learning styles. And once you operate within the UDL, you're addressing specific issues, because it's almost like you're thinking in the reverse to get to your students, right? Again, you are going to probably sometimes miss one or two, but again, that comes into relationship. Now, I, as an assistant principal, what I do to my kids is I advocate self-advocacy. And let me explain what that is. I'll say to my Janaya or my Kendall, or these are my real students who I'm calling because I know them, or my Whitney, I'll say to them, hey, they'll come to me and complain, well, teacher so-and-so didn't do so-and-so. What did you do? Right? How did you address the issue that teacher so-and-so missed? So I'm teaching my children how to self-advocate, which is something that parents you have to definitely tell your students, hey, this is your process. You have to own it, right? This is you're a part of this journey. And so, because if you feel that teacher Brown is not doing the job that you're needing, you need to go to teacher Brown and say, hey, you taught me this quadratic equation. I don't know what the heck you're talking about. Can you please go over it again? Because I really need to understand what you're saying. Can you show me how to do this again? Because I really need to comprehend, because without that, I cannot do the homework. So again, self-advocacy is something that the students have to learn, and they have to do it. And I hope that addresses the issue.
Can I add one quick point?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's also, as you mentioned, homework, the role of homework. So within 40 minutes, you can't do it. Give them assignments so they can go home and do the things. The tactile learners can be involved in that way, and so on. So homework becomes critical in that way.
Absolutely. And also, I'm sorry, let me add also that, like, what I encourage my teachers to do is that, you know, we have a bunch of resources here. YouTube has everything under the sun, promise you. Everything under the sun is on YouTube. And so let's say for argument's sake that you did not get a chance to teach something properly. If you have a link, or if you can direct your kids to YouTube, there's some teacher out there that's put it on there. And I'm telling you, teaching is such that you don't have to reinvent the wheel anymore. You really don't.
And as this is meant to be, this is definitely a teacher-related question, but we're meant to be talking about what parents can do on today's session. And I see Ms. Love is coming back and asking more about what teachers, and I think our education group is going to be delving quite extensively into this topic. This is definitely not one that's going to go away for a little bit, as we're, getting into addressing the issues as the children are back in school. But as far as parents, as you said, the child is going to advocate for themselves, but a parent also, can we talk about what the parents are themselves doing?
Yeah, so the parents need to also build a relationship, as Dr. Kerr so eloquently said. That relationship is the key. It is the key. I tell my teachers, you cannot wait until something is wrong to reach out to parents. That is the wrong time to make a connection. We have what's called sunshine calls. If Henry was able to sit through a whole lesson, you call home and you tell mom, hey, mom, Henry did awesome today. He sat through an entire lesson. You know what you're doing? You're building relationship. You're building relationship. And so the parents cannot wait until the grades are down or the report card to reach out to the teacher. I'll even go as far, and I don't know, a teacher's probably going to crucify me for this, but I'll even go as far as saying that if you're having a hard time, you need to ask for a copy of those lesson plans. Unorthodox, yes, and I probably will get shot for that, but it's okay. You need to ask for a copy of those lesson plans. Ask for a copy of the textbook. Ask for a copy of the workbook. Get the resources at home so that you can, if Henry's showing you, hey, mom, I'm on problem 7 and I don't know, and you can look at problem 7 and read it for yourself and comprehend it for yourself, then maybe, just maybe, you can help Henry accomplish what he needs to accomplish.
Yeah. Dr. Kurt, let me ask you, because it's definitely a big load for parents. And what if, like Ms. Thomas is saying, I must get this, and I must look at the lesson plan, and I must look at Vivian's schoolwork, and I must help Vivian figure it out. What if it looks different? It looked different to me, and it's not how I was used to when I was growing up. Dr. Kerr, what are they gonna do?
Okay, so this is where we said before, the textbooks are there to teach you. And I want to reinforce the importance of the syllabi. So the syllabi is on the Ministry of Education website. We'll be putting them up now in Jamaica. And definitely all of the syllabi you need for CSEC, CAPE, they're online. So get into them, as Ms. Thomas just said. Additionally, you can't do the maths problem. Many of us did maths 30, 40 years ago. It means that you need to get someone who is closer to this child's age group to help, to explain. Yes, there's YouTube, but there's also help even in the very house. The older children can help because they've just gone through it. Get tutors, as we said before. Maybe paid tutor, maybe the teacher that's in Jamaica. I don't know if you know about the extra class thing, extra lessons, but there's a lot of that happens. And there are a lot of services now, privately businesses that actually do the additional work. You can get one-on-one educational services now. Then they promo for them now, or there are a few others that help the Ministry of Education during the pandemic to keep our children online. So there are tutors there. They're offering free packaging now for PEP students. And so you can actually go on and use those resources. There are teachers online willing to help. Awesome. So if you can't do it, it's not a reason for not helping.
Okay. All right, we have Celeste Touchesley is one of our work group members, and she's in the chat as well, giving some suggestions about to filter a lesson assignment with one example using a different learning style for using an example, providing an example using each learning style. And let's see. We have Bishop Law has said some teachers are too bully, and children are often timid, or they feel shy and they don't want to advocate because they feel like the teacher will get upset. So
this is where
I take that one.
Again,
sorry.
The relationship comes in, and I know that because when I went to school in Jamaica back when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, I had a teacher who she taught my father. And so she knew my whole family. And so she decided that I was public enemy number one. And so she was harsh compared to, the older me looking back, she was mean. And so I was afraid of her because, there are just some teachers, but see, as an administrator, I have to put my lens on and advocate for the children. And if I'm an administrator and I see certain things in the classroom, because I'm popping in and I'm making sure that teachers are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And if I see certain things in the classroom and teachers and students are afraid, I'm addressing that teacher. And so if that parent, if you get wind of that, you need to go to the principal and speak to the principal and let them know that, because, those kind of environments, children are not able to learn. They're too afraid. And that's not what we want. We want our children to learn because we're trying to preserve the future. All right. And so, Dr. Kirk can always correct me if I'm wrong, but this is where my administrative lens come on. I am holding that teacher accountable because I need to know, why is it that this child can't function in your classroom? Why?
Right.
Yeah, if I quickly add, in fact, that is critical that the administrators be aware, and as you say, popping in and not just staying in the office. So it's important, and that they have an open door policy so the children feel comfortable to go and make the reports, because if the reports are not made, you may not know and might not be able to address it. But this is where we also ask for the parent-child relationship to be so great that the child will complain to parents and parents can advocate.
Yes.
So if it is, and this is something that I've been saying, and I shared with you the book earlier, because all these are laid out step by step. You go to the grade overseer, so you might not go directly to the teacher. Go to the grade overseer, that person does nothing. You go to the VP, nothing happens. You go to the principal, nothing happens. Go to the regional office of the Ministry of Education. And if the regional office is not addressing it, go to the ministry, because your child needs to learn without a fear, because part of it is the fear of reprisal, teachers getting upset and so on. So you can in fact address it generally without having to say, my child is having this problem, but say to the principal or the administrator, depending on who it is you're speaking with, we are aware that there's a challenge in class X. And I know some principals want to know the name of the particular student. Stay away from that as much as possible, because teachers are humans, they may not intentionally, but they may just end up, victimizing, quote unquote, your children. Absolutely. So parents are crucial to that.
Parents are crucial, absolutely. Dr. Peter Kin has pointed out that if it's the case that teachers are bullies and not educators, we at PD on how to reach, teach, and cope with different learners. I'm not understanding completely, but
he's talking about professional development for teachers so that they'll know how to respond to different children and their various learning styles.
Oh, okay.
And if I may quickly add, teachers are also in the pandemic, and so they might be stressed. And sometimes that might come out in the classroom, because we've seen that here in Jamaica. And so we have been saying to teachers, when you're feeling stressed, take a break, do self-care, get help.
Absolutely.
Can I also add, I'm sorry, that, sometimes our own biases will show up under a stressful environment. And we have to be very careful with that, because, some things you have flashbacks sometimes. And I know, as adults, we process things a little differently than children, but, sometimes you see something, you flash back, and then all of a sudden it becomes reality. And then next you're reacting based on what you're seeing, and it's not right, but you can't stop yourself. So we just have to be very careful with that.
For the teachers, and also then for the parents, as parents, I think Dr. Carr, you mentioned self-care, how critical that is. If you can talk some more about what the parents themselves, as we know it's hard. We know that there's economic stressors, the reality, there's still social distance type things that are coming up. We're not engaging as much. How we can help parents to kind of increase that self-care and think of what their needs are so that it doesn't flash back out at the kids. the children?
Okay, thanks. So we advise the parents to recognize when it is that you're feeling stressed. So look for the signs of stress. You can always do a Google search, to see how will I know if I'm really stressed. And if you find that you are stressed, then take a break and address that which is causing the stress. If it is that it's financial, where can I go get help? So you have to now begin to look at where resources are available. If it is psychological, this is where we mentioned that the hotline that the Ministry of Health has. And the Parenting Support Commission has the psychosocial support. So it doesn't matter what challenge you have as a parent, there is a system in place to address that. If you're not working, Ministry of Labor, you can visit them, the Social Security section, and they will provide you with guidance, support, how it is that you might be able to get a job. Some teachers, some parents end up volunteering to be able to just keep their minds occupied and away, busy and so on, and just feeling more empowered. So where you're feeling that, boy, I can't do this, you're just feeling like you can't be bothered, talk to somebody. It doesn't necessarily have to be you calling somebody on the phone. It could be your pastor, it could be someone, a good friend, somebody who's trained in the area. If you're beginning to feel suicidal, let's address that. Let's call it what it is. Some people get to that point. We're saying get help, call for help, get professionals to assist you, because it means that it's really, really bad now. All right. And so this is why you would have seen me sharing. Help is available, a lot of free services available, believe it or not. A lot of them are not being costed. And even when persons are asked to pay, when persons who are trained in the area recognize there's an emergency, they're also able to do what we call pro bono services.
So they're able to intervene, even if money is a factor. We should never let money be a factor, right?
Exactly. And this is where earlier I mentioned the whole matter of the life insurance, it's health insurance scheme. Some of them now have, and we've learned during the pandemic, they now have a service or a benefit for counseling. So some persons are not aware. We're saying parents, talk with your HR managers, directors in your companies, and ask them if counseling is possible within your health plan. And if it is possible, they need to add that because we're in a pandemic. And so we have been advocating for that to happen so that they can very privately go to someone to help, somebody who's professionally trained to get the assistance that they need.
Oh, that's great. We're having a fairly robust discussion in the chat. Somebody was saying that the teachers might not give the syllabus, but Dr. Curry, you mentioned that it's being posted.
It's on the Ministry of Education website. And this is why it's crucial that persons visit the website and see what resources are there.
Okay. That's good to know. And there seemed to be quite a bit from your presentation. You seem to outline quite a bit of resources that with tips and strategies too for persons to check on that. Let's see. We are coming up on our clock here, but let's see what others have to say. Parents. Donna. Educational evaluation may give us more information to what may block or something. Parents can join to help the children in the classroom with fun, out-of-the-box ways to learn lessons. That's a wonderful suggestion that parents can, at home, parents can also include fun activities that's going to reinforce the learning that's been given at school. And there's something about Donna that I'm not tracking. A discussion on a Donna that I'm not tracking in there. Oh. Celeste has mentioned that knowing your own learning style as a parent, as it may be different from your child's learning style, and that may help close the gap to get support and knowing how to support your child by how they learn best. So
there are multiple learning style surveys online. There's not a universal one that people can take, but and it's not static. So what I mean by that, it's not. I know that I am a visual and I'm also an auditory learner. So they're hybrid models as well. And if you take the when I was doing my Gifted and Talented certification, I had to take a learning styles inventory because the only way we can identify students who are either gifted and talented or twice exceptional is by the learning styles inventory.
What does that mean, twice exceptional?
So twice exceptional means that the children may be diagnosed with a learning disability, but they are also scoring within the 95th percentile of the Myers-Briggs, which is the gifted and talented portion of the Myers-Briggs. And so we have two we have two exams that we administer to children. One is called a Raven, which is an exam that it's not written, it's analytical. Very, very hard. And if to be classified as gifted, you have to score within the 98th percentile of that exam. And so the twice exceptional child might be diagnosed with a special education disability, but they're also gifted. Percentile of that exam. All right.
Yeah, the other thing we need to be aware of, if I may very quickly add, is that you can have a particular disability in a particular area. It could be mathematics or English,
Right.
etc. But it doesn't mean that it's in everything.
Right.
And I think that's what you're speaking to.
Yes.
So as parents, you had mentioned, Dr. Kerr, about getting the psychoeducational evaluation, and I think in the chat, that's what was being referred to as advocating for that. Is that something that's easily accessible in Jamaica?
I'd say yes and no. In that it's accessible if you're going through someone who is private in providing the service and you're able to pay, easy to access. If it is, you're going to be waiting on the free microcare, for example, their facility, and there are at least 3 testing sets. There's one in Kingston, Michael. There's also some shop in Montego Bay, and I know Manchester has one. You can always, but you're going to end up in a waiting list, and it can be for a long time. So that's not as easy to access. What a number of schools have done over the years is they actually invite the assessors in and have the parents, and many times they're able to work out reasonable packages, have the parents pay for that, and the person comes and does the assessment on site. So that will help to reduce the cost. So yes and no in responding to that.
Okay, so yeah, so there, as we're talking about resources, and we had mentioned last time also that the a parent's capacity is going to vary as well, right? So there are parents in different economic levels, and we're encouraging, right? What your input on how to encourage people at different structures, what they can do themselves, even though they may not have certain means, but as just reinforce the
okay. With regards to the Ministry of Education, Special Education Unit that I mentioned earlier, there is in fact an office at all of the regional offices. So they're able to do a particular level of assessment. And in many of our schools, we now have special educators, and they're able to do at least the basic, give you a sense of what's happening. And if it is that they're seeing a need for further assessment, then they'll do the referrals. So within those particular schools where we know there's a significant challenge learning gap, then it means that those schools are equipped so to do. Yes. And we are aware too that in some schools where the teachers are seeing some students falling behind, it's a call out program, or let's say call them out, and those children are dealt with separately, maybe placed in a class by themselves and are provided the additional support. So if the school becomes aware, they also do what they can internally to help.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And Bishop Law is also advocating for the psychoed assessment. And she has indicated that, maybe somebody likes to read, doesn't like to read, but she's good at maths and science, and the report can, she had a personal experience where the report guided her in certain areas that's going to help the child. So it's always good too to accentuate the positive, as the song says, even though there are learning gaps, there are areas of strength as well, right?
Yes.
Definitely.
We want to
and so this is where, when you work with the council, they'll be able to say, remember to speak about the good, the positives, because that will motivate them. So yes, you may have a challenge in this area because we all can't do everything well.
Amen.
Come on, we have some area, all of us, that we don't do so well on. And so what we'll say, for example, to those who are not good at maths and English, just make sure you pass it. Yeah, because you know that those are required.
Right.
Then you focus on the areas that you know you're really good at and make sure you get the grade ones and so on. So that's what we really say to our children, our parents. So motivate them, encourage, focus on the things they're doing well. And that will help to at least build their self-esteem. And in psychology, you call it self-efficacy, the belief that you have the ability to do well. And so that's what we say to parents.
Very good. Yes, let's see if there's anything else. Celeste has given about multiple intelligence assessments. Bishop Law has talked about $45,000 privately for psycho-ed assessment. Very expensive, psychoeducation.
And it's very in-depth, you know. I've looked at a few reports. It's a lot of work. And it takes hours, to be able to go through, to do the various tests, to be able to say exactly what's wrong. And so this is even why even MicroCare, which has it freely available, or Shamshark Teachers College, it's not, you have a waiting list because it takes time to do each. And to prepare the reports too.
Great value in the actual reports if it's, you know, when you get
definitely. Because it actually says what's wrong. So you can then fix it. It's like you go to the doctor. And so all the psycho-ed assessment, the psychometric assessment, all of those are saying, this is where the challenge is. So you fix that. And once you're able to fix that, you will be amazed because many of the times, for example, to look at reading, if you're not able to read, it's going to affect all the other subjects, your ability to do well. Right. And so if you're able to fix that, then you will have that domino effect, you know, where improvements will be, you know, skyrocketed.
Awesome. Okay, so those are the questions that we have, and I just want to take the time to just at this time to say thank you to you both. I don't see any additional questions in the chat, and very, very important information presented here and resources. I think that even though it's challenging, it's also hopeful, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. Don't worry about the thing. It's going to be all right. You see, and this is part of the solution, you know. We say, yeah, we see the problem. Let's fix it. Let's work together. And you know, it takes a village. It's the entire, all of us, whether you're here in Jamaica or you're in the US, once you're on board, we're working together to get this thing done. And that's the crucial thing. So it's parents working together with the teachers, working together with the guidance counselors, with guidance counselors need support referring externally. So we also speak about where there's external resources available. Help is available, and that's what gives hope. That's what gives hope.
Yeah, also to concur with Dr. Kerr, sometimes the victories are infinitesimal. What I mean by that is it's just micro steps after micro steps after micro steps. And every micro step is a miracle. So we
need to applaud it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Especially
and
when you're dealing with the ones who have disabilities, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the child is able to count and you're like, wow, don't take it for granted because it couldn't happen before. It wasn't happening before.
Right. So and as Jamaicans said, big it up.
Big it up, yeah. And even as parents too, we have to big up our parents because it is very difficult. It's a challenge. So big up yourself too, as you're doing it as a parent. Big up your children, and we're all in it together, the whole village together, and we're going to make it. As Jamaican, we look about Palawa, we're gonna make it.
Right.
Exactly. Everything's gonna be all right.
Every little thing gonna be all right. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it, and I am going to wish us all a happy rest of the day and take care till next time.
All righty.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.